many years, people know me more for my modelling of the Reverend W. Awdry's layout to the Ffarquhar branch, and over the years have seen me make many attempts at replicating it. In 2015, I set about building a proper replica of the original layout, and afterwards didn't think about building another one. That wasn't until 2017, while visiting the Talyllyn Railway, that I began to notice that the MrkII layout in the Awdry study can be replicated using modern day items. Most of the buildings and structures on the layout can still be bought today, and the layout was also a suitable size for a small house. So after some thought, I decided to have a try and see where it leads me. The build started in 2019, but didn't get off to a good start, as some of the items that I was using didn't work as well as I thought they would. It was only just after I'd gotten the track laid and wired that I soon realised that there were some uneven areas on the layout, and some parts of it had bowed over time. That was when I decided to take up the track, salvage the point motors and controls, and put it away for another time when I would feel ready to start again. In 2021, I attended the Awdry extravaganza at the Talyllyn Railway and had the opportunity to operate the Ffarquhar branch during the event. It was during then that the bug started to bite again, and I started to have urges to return to this project and have one more go. So before I set about making a layout, I decided to get some proper information from my good friend Luke Ryan, who was working at the railway and was kind enough to help me in my research on the layout's build and construction. At first I started making up the new baseboards, including the Awdry elbow, which is an extension of the Ffarquhar branch that was often used at large exhibitions. But before I secured the top board on, I held back for a while. I had a small feeling that the boards were not the right size and that I wanted to make sure the measurements were correct. I was invited to help out at the second Awdry extravaganza in 2022, and it was during then that I managed to check the exact measurements of the boards. When I got home and checked the boards that I made previously, it turned out that they were the wrong size. The original layout was more thinner in width than what I had, but this was only by a few inches. However, the frameworks were roughly done, but could be changed if need be. It was then I had a thought about something that I once thought about doing as far back as 2010. What if Elsbridge could be part of this replica? In 1968, the Reverend Awdry wrote that he was rebuilding his Ffarquhar layout in the January issue of Railway Modeller. The plan was to have Ffarquhar become more compact and smaller, as well as making it suitable to take to shows in the back of a saloon car. Thus the result of Ffarquhar MrkII. But in his proposed plan, Elsbridge is drawn as a passing station before the filler yards. In all of his drawings of making layouts of Thomas's branch line, Elsbridge appears in all of them. So by making what he originally envisioned for the station would be a nice add-on to the layout, as well as being its own separate layout in general should I want to exhibit something other than Ffarquhar at shows. With the layouts now sorted, it was time to sort out making the baseboards. I'm going to start off with Ffarquhar, as I've already got the measurements and the track for it. Now before, I used hardboard with several layers of pulpboard as my baseboard top, but as mentioned, this didn't work as well as I thought it would, and after my research and studying the layout more, told me that that was not the case. Instead, I'm using 9mm MDF on which I'll set my track bed on, and in between it I'll be using a layer of fiberboard. I was originally going to use plywood for this build, but found MDF to be a bit more affordable. I'm also using 36mm by 18mm timber as my framework. For the framework, I'm using the simple design of using butt joints. PVA wood glue and small long screws were used to hold the timber together. I found a miter saw to be very useful when cutting timber, for it will make my joints very square and true. With the framework for the station and station yards now done, I glued and screwed the top on. With the boards now done, I then gave it a base coat of some primer. A white primer would be best. Now it would have been a good time for me to put the hinges on to fold the boards, but I wanted to make sure the track plan would fit onto these boards okay. I got hold of the original track plan that I used to design the layout and made some alterations. Before, I had a mixture of set track and streamline track from Pico, but this time around I'm just going to be using streamline. I then printed the plan to a scale of 1:1 and placed it on top of the boards to make sure that the track layout fits fine. I also had this opportunity to make sure that no points went over the baseboard joints. Once it was satisfactory, I got hold of some carbon copy paper and duplicated the track plan onto the board. And now it was time to fit the hinges. Like with the original, these will be hidden underneath some buildings. I'm also adding this sheet of 12mm MDF at the end for the yard board to sit on once it's folded for transport. Some box clamps will be added on to secure it into place. With box clamps in mind, I added 2 at the side of the boards to ensure that it's locked in place once it's opened up. With the boards for Ffarquhar now done, it was now time to make up the ones for Elsbridge. These were made up using the same measurements as Ffarquhar. You can see here where I've dropped the baseboard slightly to allow the bridge section to be fitted in. It does look a bit warped now, but it will be fixed once I've added some side paddling to the boards. The next section was the corner piece, otherwise known as the Audrey elbow to some fans. Unlike the previous boards, I decided to cut this one myself, using a brand new tool that I bought earlier that day. When it comes to handling these machines, it's important to wear protective eye equipment. Like a knife through butter. The framework for these 2 boards were made up in the same way as before. Now comes the most important part of the building stage, and that is cleaning up your workspace. I don't think many railway modelers have ever covered this in their videos, but I think it's best worth mentioning. Nothing's worse than having to work in an untidy environment, especially after all that sawdust has been flying everywhere. You'll be seeing the complete stage of these boards in the next video, where we'll cover track work and wiring. As for me, I think I deserve a reward after making all those baseboards. A nice fish and chip supper. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next part.